I think it's an outrage, and our children will bear the burden of any changes he makes to the Department of Education to try to destroy it, to try to dismantle it, to try to reduce it in size. Our kids need the support that the Department of Education give them. I received an email from a parent and a teacher just yesterday about what would happen to her family. She has a child who has an individualized education plan. It would throw her child's education into complete disarray. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Our federal workers devote their careers to serve the American people. Unfortunately, our federal agencies are chronically understaffed. My office often works with New Yorkers struggling to get Social Security, Medicare, or VA benefits that they've earned and deserve because of agency delays. I've heard from one Erie County woman who said she waited nearly 8 months for the Social Security Administration to process her paperwork and release the benefits that she was owed. Apparently, she and her lawyer contacted the agency several times, but never received any follow-up. This is just one example of the lengthy delays that New Yorkers can face at the agencies like Social Security and the VA. Now, President Trump is threatening to make it even worse. President Trump's federal hiring freeze will exacerbate these staffing problems, hurt seniors, hurt people with disabilities, and harm veterans. Last year, the Social Security Administration's workforce hit a 27-year low, while the vast majority of Veterans Health Administration facilities reported severe shortages for medical officers and nurses. The hiring freeze makes things worse at those agencies. It risks increasing application processing times, wait times for appointments, and hold times for the phone calls, which would effectively prevent seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities from getting their benefits and the health care they need to live. We have already seen local SSA offices forced to close in recent months due to staffing shortages. This policy puts more offices at risk. We've also seen how staffing shortages at VA facilities have jeopardized patient care. Forcing people to wait indefinitely for their benefits of care is unacceptable. This week, as ranking member of the Senate Aging Committee, I'm demanding answers. I'm asking the Trump administration what impact the federal hiring freeze will have on older adults, veterans, and people with disabilities. I'm also requesting information related to plans for spending cuts targeting these communities. Millions of people rely on Social Security, Medicare, and VA benefits throughout New York State. Retirees and people with disabilities depend on Social Security to pay for everyday expenses. Seniors and people with disabilities count on Medicare to pay for the help that they need and the care that they need. All of these people deserve agencies that are well equipped to meet their needs, and the Trump administration's firing freeze will not achieve this goal. I will be working to make sure these agencies get the funding and staffing that they need to better serve New York, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Senator,
Yep.
Tom Brune here, Newsday.
Hi, Tom.
It's a little off topic. Can I
Okay.
ask? What was your reaction to President Trump's statements last night about taking over Gaza and forcing Palestinians to live elsewhere?
I think it is a very dangerous statement. I think it is something that has been pushed back on by both adversaries and allies alike. It is something that will deeply destabilize the region, and it will create a necessity to put American boots on the ground, something that President Trump promised he would not do. And so it is harmful, it is destabilizing, and it goes back on his promises. I do not think this is something the American people will support, and I stand strongly against it.
Senator, it's Marsha Kramer from CBS in New York. I wonder if you think that this could also upend the peace process, phase 2 and phase 3, because people will say that there's, and then the rest of the hostages won't come home.
Yes, absolutely. I believe that what the Middle East and particularly Prime Minister Netanyahu should be focused on is getting our hostages home and then working with the Abrahamic Alliance to rebuild Gaza for the Gazans, for the people who live there, for the Palestinians who call Gaza home. And that can be done with allies such as Saudi Arabia and Emiratis and Bahrainis and other members of the Abrahamic Alliance. That should be the focus of both Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we can support that type of agreement. What he's suggesting is very different than that. And what he's suggesting is deeply problematic, dangerous, and destabilizing.
I just wonder if you think that there's a danger that the second phases of the peace agreement will fall apart because of what he did.
I do. I think the fact that we have a ceasefire agreement, hostages are being returned home. I think that will disrupt the negotiations that have been made and the agreement that has been reached to date. And he's in the wrong place. He's absolutely creating turmoil and dissension and disruption when we should be moving the region towards peace and rebuilding after we get the hostages home.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Senator, this is Mark Gronich, Statewide News Service. I was wondering if you had any idea of how, when President Trump says you need, that he could do away with congestion pricing. How does that happen? What's the mechanism involved for him to come into New York City and do something like that?
I don't think he can. It's a law that was passed by our legislature. It was signed into law by our governor, and it is being implemented today. He does not have the authority to stop congestion pricing. And if he tries to meddle in New York State's work that they do, its legislature, its governor, its funding for mass transit, it's highly problematic. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to bully New York, but New Yorkers are not easily bullied.
Do you think he'll withhold federal transportation aid until New York State acquiesces?
Congress has the power of the purse, not the presidency, so he doesn't have the authority to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, hi.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's Ron Plants at Channel 2 in Buffalo, Senator. I don't know if you had heard about the proposal from Congress members Langworthy and Tenney to use the Niagara Falls Air Reserve Station as a potential deportation flight center, also to house possibly detainees. Obviously, they said they would have to look to funding with the Defense Department to do something like that. What's your reaction to hearing that that airbase could be possibly used for such a purpose?
Our air base is intended to support our national security, to train our future pilots, to be prepared for wartime and national security priorities. That is not in their mission set and should not be used for that.
Would you seek to oppose that by chance? I mean, it is a federal facility. I don't, but would you seek to oppose something like that?
I can certainly articulate my view against it, but if the president orders the Department of Defense to take on this mission set and orders the facility to be used in that way, I would have to pass a law denying that operation. And that would mean I would need Republican support in both the House and the Senate. And since this idea is from our Republican House members, I think it would be difficult to get that.
Senator, this is Brendan Scanlon with Lilly Broadcasting and WENY News. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us this morning. I'm just curious, your reaction about the administration's efforts to go after the Department of Education and, what potential ramifications that could have for New York schools.
I think it's an outrage, and our children will bear the burden of any changes he makes to the Department of Education to try to destroy it, to try to dismantle it, to try to reduce it in size. Our kids need the support that the Department of Education give them. I received an email from a parent and a teacher just yesterday about what would happen to her family. She has a child who has an individualized education plan. It would throw her child's education into complete disarray. President Trump wants to give everyone access to whatever school they want to apply to. A lot of those schools are not high quality schools. A lot of those schools don't meet certification requirements. A lot of them are for profit that are just trying to make money off our kids. So so far his ideas on education will be deeply destabilizing for the quality of education that our kids will have access to.
Hi, Senator Sophia Ventoro from NBC5 in Plattsburgh here. I wanted to follow up with you about the situation at the Upstate Correctional Facility in Malone. It lifted its lockdown yesterday after close to a week, and that was all because of the chemical exposures over the last week or so, sent dozens to the hospital. Have you learned anything new about that situation or what these substances are that are coming into New York prisons?
I have been asking to get briefed on the situation as I've been hearing about it in real time. I don't know what the substance is that they came in contact with. I'm concerned it's fentanyl. I'm concerned it's some other horrific, deadly compound. And so I would like answers because we want to make sure the personnel that work there are protected. We want to make sure the inmates that are there are protected. It's a humanitarian issue that we have to get to the bottom of. If the order is now lifted, then maybe they have an answer. I've not been told of the answer yet.
Thank you.
Any other on or off topics? Okay. If you have any follow-ups, just talk to Isha or to Evan. Thank you all.
Now listen, this is another example of the incompetence, the chaos, and the corruption of this administration. Incompetence, they send Doge and Elon Musk to cut government in every way they can without any regard for what the program is doing. They literally just throw the spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. These cuts to NIOSH are deeply harmful. We have developed over the last 20 years the ability to have the smartest scientists, the smartest epidemiologists, the best doctors, the best specialists to protect our 9/11 first responders and their families. They know what diseases are being formed because they prove it. They do the work to assess which diseases are caused by these toxins. And when you are firing the people who are running this program, who actually meet the needs of our 9/11 first responders and our family members, you're destroying their lives. You're destroying their ability to get the care they need, and you're destroying the hope of their families that through treatment they can survive these diseases. That is incompetence. It is the definition of incompetence. Chaos. They cut the program like about a month ago, creating enormous chaos for the men and women who are under this program, for their families, for their concern, their fears. This is the hallmark of the Trump administration, create chaos without any regard. And now the final point is the corruption. Why are they cutting NIOSH? Because they want to give tax cuts to their billionaire buddies. They want to give tax cuts to cabinet members, tax cuts to Elon Musk, tax cuts for the wealthiest among us at the cost of our 9/11 first responders, their families, their health, their well-being. This is total bullshit. You should call it for what it is. It's an outrage, and it's the unbelievable incompetence, chaos, and corruption of the Trump administration.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Over the past few weeks, I've heard from many New Yorkers worried about the Trump administration's effort to cut essential staff and contracts at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Several of the people that I've heard from are veterans. They say that the VA provides them essential services that they simply can't do without. One letter I received is from an LGBTQ disabled Navy veteran who has complex PTSD and relies on the VA for mental health care. Another is from a woman who says her husband is relying on the VA for treatment for stage 3 prostate cancer. A third is from a disabled Marine Corps veteran who has used the VA wellness and nutrition programs. I received many letters from civilians who have also been affected by these devastating cuts as well. One letter is from a worker who says 19 of his company's contracts with the VA have been canceled, resulting in hundreds of his coworkers being laid off. Another is from a VA employee who inexplicably is fired after dedicating almost 2 decades of her life working for the VA. These are real people. They are our neighbors, our family, friends, and our friends. And now they face an uncertain future because of the Trump administration's senseless cuts. For years, I fought to pass the PACT Act, which expanded VA health benefits to veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Since President Biden signed the legislation into law in 2022, the VA has been expanding operations and hiring new staff to help handle the influx of new claims. It has been working to address longstanding staffing shortages that have resulted in 137 out of 139 VA health centers being severely understaffed. But now the Trump administration has fired about 2,400 VA employees and is canceling over 500 VA contracts, including those that help veterans get benefits guaranteed to them under the PACT Act. It has also detailed a plan to lay off additional 83,000 employees in the future, including about 20,000 veterans. Such cuts to the VA will unquestionably harm our nation's veterans and jeopardize the lives of hardworking New Yorkers across the state. They will force veterans to wait longer for care, jeopardize the lives of those who are at risk of suicide, and stymie life-saving medical research that is critical to providing quality health care. What's worse, the VA has not shared any information with Congress beyond hollow assurances about how these cancellations will not affect the life-saving care and treatment that our veterans were promised. The Trump administration's lack of transparency on top of their devastating cuts has created chaos, confusion, and anxiety, not only for veterans who deserve the highest level of care, but for their families and those who make up our veteran support systems. Last week, I led a group of 18 senators calling on the Trump administration to reverse its cancellation of over 500 VA contracts and with the Department of Veterans Affairs. I also joined a letter with Senator Blumenthal condemning VA Secretary Collins's plans to cut 83,000 VA employees and urging him to put veterans first. Our veterans and those who care for them are some of the best and brightest people in our country. We must send a clear message to the Trump administration that we will not give up and we will not surrender and we will leave no one behind. And we will keep fighting to support our veterans and their right to receive the highest quality of care. Happy to take questions.
Good morning, Senator. This is Rachel Knapp with WENY News DC Bureau. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I have an on topic and an off topic, but I'll begin with the on topic. What message does this send to veterans about these potential cuts and changes to some of these programs? Thank you.
It sends a message that President Trump and Elon Musk do not care about them.
Thank you. And I'll wait until the other on topic questions are finished.
Anyone else on topics?
Brian O'Neill.
Senator.
Brian O'Neill, then next one. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. Do we know how this affects the Bath VA in Steuben County at all?
I'm sure it doesn't affect it well. These cuts will be across the board, so they will get cuts as well.
And is that in staff or in funding for treatments?
It might be both. And we'll hear directly from them as these cuts begin to get implemented.
Thank you.
Senator Terry Frank in Jamestown.
Hi, Terry, go ahead.
Just a follow up on Brian's question. Have you heard anything about VAs being shut down? I mean, VA hospitals across the nation.
We have concerns about it. To deal with these kinds of cuts, next might come consolidation. So we don't know what the Trump administration has planned. We just know that they do not care about harming veterans or their access to service.
Thank you.
Senator Tom Puckett at WBEN in Buffalo. Senator, on topic question regarding the VA. How would any of these cuts affect the Buffalo VA when we've heard so much about the treatment of veterans there being less than stellar?
Yeah, well, as you know, the Buffalo VA has had significant problems, and a lot of VAs across the country and across New York have been understaffed chronically. So more cuts is not going to solve problems in these VAs. Cuts to research, cuts to treatments, cuts to personnel, all of them are harmful. The VA did not suffer from fat being in their budget. The VA never suffered from having waste in their budget. The VA has chronically suffered from having too few resources and too few staff and too few specialists. And so again, Elon Musk knows nothing about the VA. He certainly didn't serve. He doesn't know, and neither does President Trump.
Thank you, Senator.
Will there be any lawsuits to try to stop Trump's VA cuts? I certainly hope so. I hope multiple VAs file a class action. Or at least veterans. Veterans themselves will have standing. Other questions? Okay, off topics.
Senator, with Rachel with WENY News again. Just wanted to ask about the continuing resolution. Where do you currently stand on it? Are you going to, as of right now, are you going to support it, oppose it? And then, yeah, let's just start there.
Right now, we are trying to force Republicans to come to the table. They presented an appropriations bill with no Democratic input. And the types of budgets they're putting forward include slashes to the VA, limiting money for special needs children, limiting resources for SNAP programs for our seniors, for Meals on Wheels, for the school lunch programs, any type of investment that is being cut in this bill. They did it on their own will without any input for Democrats. And so what we are now asking is that we want a 30-day continuing resolution to allow for the appropriations process to actually work so that Democrats and Republicans can come together to come up with a spending bill that we can all support.
Thank you. And if Republicans aren't able to come to the table with y'all, what then? I know a lot of Democrats that I've heard from, they say they don't want to shut down, but that's what it could potentially lead to. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to keep pushing for this bipartisan resolution. We've heard anecdotally that there are many Republican senators who are very unhappy with this bill. It takes away their ability to make decisions about which investments are best for their states. And so we are hoping that if we can force this vote, that we might get a number, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. Like, we don't know the number of Republicans to vote with us. We want to show the Republican leadership that they can't continually ignore the minority and that it is wrong for them to try to have their way or the highway. It's not what the American people asked for.
Thank you.
Senator Tom Puckett at WBEN in Buffalo again. Senator, there have been a lot of talks about tariffs between the U.S. and Canada. How concerned are you that these tariffs that President Trump has issued, especially against Canada, could backfire on the U.S. economy?
Oh, I'm highly concerned. It's going to be very damaging for New York's economy. We get a lot of inputs from Canada. We buy their lumber, we buy computers, we buy food, we buy building materials, we buy a lot of things from Canada. And so if they retaliate to the tariffs that Trump has put on them with another 25%, that means every input for everything we manufacture in the United States that has a Canadian input is going to go up in cost. It means prices for New Yorkers and Americans are going to go up. Food prices have continued to soar. It is so ill-advised and wrong-headed to start a trade war with our closest ally and partner, Canada. It really is going to hurt the North Country and Buffalo's economy for sure very quickly, but it will affect all New Yorkers and all Americans.
And on another topic, Senator, if I may, Governor Hochul recently announced that the striking corrections workers would be, by the 2,000 who were fired, would be banned from state work again, and also she would recommend they not be allowed to work for another police agency. In your opinion, how justified was the governor in making that ruling?
I would need to look at what she said. I didn't follow it. But I can understand that when you have critical workers and who have agreements not to strike, it's an issue. But I have not reviewed it, so I don't know what the basis of her decision was.
All right, fair enough. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Terry Frank again.
Hi, Terry.
I did want to ask regarding the CR. You mentioned that there could be 7 to 10 Republicans who are opposed to it. At this point, has Senate Majority Leader Thune put anything on the schedule in terms of a vote number 1 or number 2? Is he worried about losing Republicans?
Well, at least one has already verbally said she would not support this jammed through CR that has no bipartisan input, and that was Lisa Murkowski. So she'd be the type of person, I believe, who would vote with us for a 30-day CR. We've heard rumblings that many Republicans are unhappy about this process. So I just don't know how many will stand up the way Lisa has and demand a better process.
Thank you.
And no, we don't have a schedule yet. They haven't told us that they'll let us have a vote. That's
Thanks.
correct, right? We've not heard otherwise. Okay. Anything else? Well, thank you all for being on.
Senator, I have a question. This
Oh.
is Holiday Moore from
ahead,
WA
Holiday.
Syracuse.
Yep.
Have you noticed a common denominator between the groups of New Yorkers and Americans the White House administration is targeting? In other words, is it a coincidence or intentional that the groups are typically unable to defend themselves in local or federal legislatures? And in your opinion, what should Americans do to help those groups?
Yeah, no, well, so far he's just done across the board cuts for every type of entity. But those who are least able to fight back are social service organizations. For example, domestic abuse homes that are safe havens, not-for-profits that feed our seniors, like Meals on Wheels or Head Start programs. These organizations do not have extra cash lying around to file lawsuits. And so what I am hoping is that they can join other people's lawsuits. I would urge the larger entities that have, like, hospitals and universities that have a great deal of resources, that if they're trying to meet the same needs of the same types of populations, that they create class action lawsuits, similarly situated plaintiffs. But you're right, a lot of the most do-gooders in our community and in society who are helping the least among us are the ones that have no extra funds to file lawsuits. And so I'm hopeful that those who do have those resources can support the ones who don't.
Senator Gillibrand, Sarah Darmanjan from News Channel 13. Earlier this week, Governor Hochul proposed a ban on cell phones statewide for schools. And I just wanted to get your reaction on that. And also, the U.S. has been placed on a watch list for human rights.
Who has?
The U.S., the United States.
Whose watch list?
It was Civicus.
I don't know what Civicus is. What's Civicus? I need to look out who Civicus is.
Basically, it's an international organization that monitors human rights.
Which human rights violations are they concerned about?
They're concerned about the Trump administration and a lot of the changes that they have been implementing, like defunding USAID and such.
Yep. Yeah.
I was wondering if I could get your reaction to that also.
So your first question was about cell phones in schools. As a mom with kids in school, I think it's a very good thing. I think kids should not have cell phones in schools. I understand also as a mom that you want your kid to have a cell phone when they're either walking to school or taking the bus, transporting to and from school, to and from a soccer game. That's fine. But when they're learning, those cell phones should be away. They should be in backpacks or lockers. They should not be permitted to be used. I think it's a distraction for kids. It's rotting their brains. Even my kids have their own, they call it doom scrolling, when you just get sucked into whatever you watch, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or Reels, and you just keep watching for hours. It is disgraceful. It is harmful. It hurts our kids. And all of these platforms, all their algorithms are based on how addictive is the content. So they're trying to addict our children. They want our children to spend hours and hours. And I'm not saying whether the content's good or bad, like funny cat videos are funny, but we need our kids to be learning, and they should not be doom scrolling at all during school hours. And the second question, what was it again?
I have one more question.
Oh, Holiday, 1 second. The second question was, we're on a civil rights watch list. I have grave concerns about some of the actions of the Trump administration, and I do think many of them are violating civil rights. They're violating our Constitution, and they are illegal. So I don't know this group or what their thoughts were, and I don't care, but I do know that the Trump administration is violating civil rights, breaking the law and breaking the Constitution in many of the decisions they've made, including taking away Congress's power to decide how to invest money in our states, taking away programs that have already been passed by Congress and defunding them, not letting agencies send emails to actually ask for NIH grants so that people can apply for these things. He's upending government and how it works, and it is harming people every day.
Thank you, Senator.
And Elon Musk isn't elected and shouldn't have access to our private information. So that is most likely a civil rights violation. Okay, there's one more question by Holiday. Go ahead. Holiday, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, go
Okay.
ahead.
So this week marks the 5th anniversary of the COVID shutdown. Here in New York, in your opinion, are we better off as a state to combat another pandemic? And what is it are we doing better than maybe other states across the nation that can be leading?
Well, I do think our hospitals and our research institutions went above and beyond during the last pandemic. And I do think they have a lot of lessons learned and are more prepared. In New York, we were responsible for some of the therapeutics to help cure COVID when people had terrible cases of it. We are responsible for some of the most state-of-the-art critical care and rapid response. And so I think we are better prepared. But I'm very concerned about the avian flu. I think the fact that Trump is not using best practices in dealing with the avian flu, he's not willing to cull different groups of birds that have been exposed and animals that have been exposed. What that allows is the virus to mutate unrestricted until it gets to become a more virulent form where it can hop from an animal to a human. So he is making it worse.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. See you soon. Ask Isha if you need more questions.
Thank you.